It's now 10:35 a.m. My name is Dennis Austin. I have the privilege of being the chairman of the town's Economic Development Connect Communities Committee. I now open, that is a handful. I now open the public information meeting for broadband expansion on October the 16th, 2019. And as you may have noticed, Sherry Sanderson in the back is tape recording this morning's presentation for those who could not attend. It'll be on the library's YouTube site later. So thank you for doing that, Sherry. Let's start by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to read the public information meeting notice. Public notice is hereby given that on Wednesday, October 16, 2019 at 10:30 a.m. and Wednesday, October 16, 2019 at 6 p.m., the Economic Development Connect Communities Committee of the Town of Boulder Junction will hold a public information meeting at the Boulder Junction Community Center in the Boulder Lake Room. The purpose of the meeting is to allow information to be presented regarding the expansion of affordable and high-speed internet in Boulder Junction Township, and to answer public questions and comments relating to this topic. The public is encouraged to attend and participate in the meeting. A quorum of town board members and other town committee members may be in attendance at this meeting for information gathering purposes only, and no town board or town committee action will be taken at this meeting. Thank you. The Economic Development Connect Communities Committee and its Broadband Workgroup have been engaged in meetings and discussions concerning the possible expansion of affordable broadband internet in our town. Thank you for joining us in today's presentation. I'm now going to turn this over to Mr. Bill Neiman for a real education.
For what?
A real education bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Sherry, maybe just down a little bit, please. Thank you. All right, well, I think it's Wednesday morning. Thank you for coming, man. What a great turnout. You know, whenever you get started with one of these, it's kind of like, is anybody really going to come? So thanks for taking your time on a very beautiful Wednesday morning. We're going to continue to give you information based upon our work in the high-speed broadband area. So that's why we're all here today. And we've got much more information than what we shared in August. Still missing a few details, but we'll fill those in here in the next couple of weeks. Here's our agenda. We're going to go over some background for those of you who have not attended previous public information meetings. We'll probably go at it pretty steady between myself, Dennis, and Steve for about an hour. We're going to spend a little bit of time getting feedback from you, and then we'll close things up today. So that's our schedule. This high-speed broadband project is a journey. There's no question about it. Dennis Ostick and I attended a meeting yesterday that was sponsored by the State of Wisconsin Public Service Communication Commission, Public Service Commission, on broadband grant applications. And it is really interesting to see the townships and the counties who have kind of been on this trip, if you will, in the past. And some of them have been on it for 5 years. Others haven't even started yet. We've really started, let me go back. We really started not even a year ago on this journey. So I've got to say we have really done a tremendous amount of work since then. There's still more to do, but we've come a long way. So why are we really here? Well, we're here because in 2017, the Economic Development Connect Communities Committee, I'm getting pretty good at that, did a survey. And the respondents to that survey said the lack of high-speed broadband was the #1 limitation or economic challenge in the township of Boulder Junction. So that was coming up in 2 years ago now. And that's really the impetus for us to do this project. We're not alone, folks. There are a lot of rural communities which do not have adequate high-speed broadband for today, even today, but more importantly, for tomorrow, especially as the economy changes before our eyes. Wanted to write down some milestones on what we've accomplished. As I mentioned, we've started this through the EDCCC in November of 2018. Began to focus on the problem. That took us then to the step really before of starting to collect information. And that information collection period has been just enormous because there's so much data, there's so much information out there, but it's something that we absolutely had to do. We had our first public information meeting way back in February, and you know, that just seems like a few days ago. Starting in February, Dennis and others started sharing information to our town board at the town board meetings. And what we learned yesterday from some of the groups that have just started is they haven't even taken it to their elected officials. And that's an important first step, and I think it was a good early first step. April is when we really started cranking on this project. The work group was formed. Between Steve Kuhn, Dennis Ostick, and I, we have over 800 hours invested in this project already, all right? It is a significant undertaking. And then Dennis will talk with you about the stakeholder meetings that we've started and getting that engagement going, because that's an important piece. Support of these projects is absolutely critical. If we're talking about getting a grant award, or if we're talking about simply being able to support a provider when they make that commitment or make that investment. In May, we had the Wisconsin State Broadband Director here. She's now left her position. There's a new person in that role, but that was an important springboard to put us on the Madison map. And that's critical. Going down July, you can see a lot of activity. Probably the most important one there is Governor Evers signed $48 million into the 2-year budget in grant money. I'm going to talk more about that as we get further on in the presentation. But keep that number in mind. August, we had our second and third public information meetings, and then September, we went out to suppliers for estimated cost and conceptual designs. That's an important step to understand what are we looking at here from a cost perspective and a scope. The PSC grant deadline is December 19th of this year. If we're going to go for this and go for a grant, we need to submit probably a week in advance, just to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. And then we were also awarded the telecommunication forward certification, and I'll show you that and talk a little bit more about that. So where are we now? October. We have analyzed the estimated costs, and we're going to share that information with you today. And then here we are in our public information meetings. Telecommuter Forward. This was presented at the September board meeting. And you may look at this and say, well, it's just a piece of paper. Well, it is a piece of paper, that's true. But again, what it does is it puts Boulder Junction on the map that's looked at by Madison. Okay? That's an important first step for Madison to understand that something like this, that a project like this is important for Boulder Junction. And others look at us. They're looking at us and talking about us. And that's important when it comes to getting grant funds. Those of you who attended the August public information meetings probably recognize this slide. It's changed a little bit, but why is investing in high-speed broadband necessary or essential? It's not about just planting broadband, fiber optic cable in the ground. It's not about just connecting it to our homes. It's about what it brings. So what does it bring to communities? It brings the ability to market to young families, to new families, to come into the area, to settle in the area. It also allows the ability to market to new eco-friendly businesses. Because I think it's pretty clear that the economy that we've known for maybe the last 20 years, it's changing. And it's changing right before our eyes. Some of it is kind of like, you just want to hold on to something because it is changing that quickly. Businesses are changing just unbelievably fast. So when you get new folks coming into the community, that develops the need for new support services and businesses. Those that are required day after day after day, really no matter what the economy is like. Which brings us to the third piece. It also, when you put these two steps together, it also helps stabilize and diversify the economy. So we're about 10 years into our economic growth cycle, okay? That's about the max that we can see. You might be thinking, well, when's the downturn coming? Well, we have, 35 people in here? You probably put your hands up, we'd have 35 different answers. But one's coming. One's coming. We want to be able to level out those peaks and valleys. And that's what broadband will do. Children's educations. So much, and this has really been a great learning opportunity. So much now is driven to teleeducation. Use of the internet, use of videos, use of training that is only available online. That's where the whole industry is going. And if we don't create access for these students, it can be left behind. It's not a good situation. For those of us who may have more gray hair than what we like, this is an option to help keep us in our homes longer through telemedicine. And as we spoke about the economy changing, this is an area that's changing just dramatically, even over the last year. So my health insurance is really going in this direction. You can tell they're pushing, they don't want me, many of them probably don't want you to go to your doctor anymore. They want you to call your doctor either on if you still have a landline or a mobile phone, or better yet, using your internet to video conference with your health provider to get diagnosis. If you've got something wrong, they can really remotely or electronically rate you a subscription, or prescription, I should say. That's where it's really moving. And if that keeps us in our homes longer, in our beautiful homes in the beautiful North Woods, that's good stuff. It really is. And then finally, it increases property values. Yesterday, I mentioned in a meeting that the state sponsored, the number bantered around was about 6% increase in property values in places that have access to high-speed broadband. So what can you do with fiber optic high-speed broadband? I was telling Steve earlier, I've been in this area for a long time, and I'm one of these remote workers, but you just kind of want to jolt your brains from time to time and figure out, what else is there? Well, I thought I would just put down a few things on what you can do with this high-speed internet. You can watch TV. We have a cable provider who, I guess as of today, is still in the township of Boulder Junction. We understand that it's the end of the month and they're going away. So there's probably, and we don't know how many subscribers, we know how many internet subscribers that they have, but we don't know how many TV subscribers. What are you going to do for television? Because people still do watch TV. So you can watch TV with high-speed broadband. You can watch videos for education, teleeducation, for pleasure, for study, for research. You can run any business because businesses today rely upon moving data. In some cases, really large chunks of data. And that applies to a high-tech firm or like an engineering firm or a builder, something like that. You can communicate. So I mentioned landline phones before. You got a receiver, you pick it up and you talk on. There aren't many of those around anymore, and who knows how long that technology is even going to exist. We have our cell phones. And no doubt that many of you have canceled your landline service to try to save a little bit of money and use your cell phone. Okay? Well, that's one option. Another option, I don't know how many of you use it, but is to use your computer to talk with somebody on the other end, and even more important, to video conference or have a video communication. In my business, I use this form of communication almost exclusively. That's kind of where everything is moving. We already talked about telehealth, bank online. You can buy anything today. Some things you don't even need. Imagine that. The cloud. This cloud, let me put it in very simple terms, is a server farm. So there's all these data centers with all these services. Amazon today runs the biggest one in the world, all right? So instead of people and businesses having their data either kept on their laptop or on a server that they may have in their homes, they now opt to put that data on a server in a protected, secured, backed up data farm. And that's where the data goes. Everything goes. However, you need a connection to be able to get it there because that's an upload speed and you need to be able to pull it down, and that's a download speed. Sell products, market services. It's a huge area for companies today, and many organizations have totally retooled their entire marketing program. Any gamers in here? Well, maybe not. But interactive gaming is a big thing, and it's a big business. Work remotely. One of the pieces of information we got Monday was we have a business person in the township of Boulder Junction. And this summer, he heard from 15 of his clients that they would stay here anywhere from days to months longer and maybe even move here if they had access to high-speed broadband, because that allows them to work remotely. And we're hearing story after story after story about family members, about children who won't come up here, and especially for people who work in jobs that, look, today jobs are 24/7. They have to have connectivity with the mothership. So if they can't come up here, guess what? You have to travel to see them. Use a smart bike or another piece of exercise equipment. You've probably seen this commercial, what is it, Peloton? You know, you've got this interactive person. All these people are in like great shape, you know? So they're doing these advertisements. That video that they're looking at is connected to the internet, which is a live kind of, well, it's just a live video feed from their studio in New York or Los Angeles. This stuff has gotten really popular. And then there's this running smart devices. Thermostats, refrigerators, security systems, cameras, open doors, turn on lights, start vacuuming. They have these robot vacuums, and I didn't know this, but they're all Wi-Fi connectable. So if you're out getting groceries and all of a sudden you found out that you have visitors coming, you can get into your phone and a smart app and turn that baby on and have a sparkling clean floor when you get home. Just mind-boggling. And that takes us to, there's stuff that hasn't even been thought of yet. So it's today, but it's tomorrow. And you know, you sit back and think, well, how are we going to live? How are we going to live? You know, we just have to change the way we've lived. I don't think we're going to have a choice. This came from September research report, broadband availability raises market value of rural homes. And again, we heard that yesterday. All right, so that's some background. Now we're going to move to some of the things that we've done, that the work group has done. We reached out to suppliers or potential suppliers, and we received, in most cases, we received a response. And I won't go through every one of these, but these are all the suppliers or potential suppliers that we have contacted. Some came in and met with us. Some said, you know, we're not really interested at all. And others, we just got nothing. So we're going to come back and talk about the two that really responded in a serious way. Dennis, you want to talk with us about the stakeholder engagement?
Sure, thank you, Bill. And Bill, remind me, Bill, you're retired from Kimberly-Clark?
Kimberly-Clark.
And how long were you there?
Over 34 years.
And what was your position at your retirement?
Director of Global Security and Corporate Air Transportation.
Okay, so you're an international traveler on behalf of a Wisconsin corporation.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. I just want, sometimes I neglect to mention, Bill has paid his dues. Stakeholder engagement, it begins with you. Number one, you are the stakeholders in this whole process. But in addition to the group as individuals, we've reached out to organizations. I see that some of them are even here. Fred Zaremka, who's seated in the middle of the row there, is the president of the Community Food Pantry. And Fred, it's my understanding that the food pantry has engaged with the work group and supports our project?
Yes, the board and the food pantry decided that this is a worthwhile project on behalf of our clients to improve their lives.
Sorry, Fred.
The board of the food pantry decided that this is a very worthwhile project on behalf of our clients that come to our facility for our services. so that they can improve their lives. They have a better, so we have adopted a formal response to encourage this development.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, Fred. But thank you for that, and we appreciate it. Marshfield Clinic, their director of telemedicine and telehealth, visited us from Marshfield here in town during the summer. And they've been very supportive of this project because they understand that telehealth is the future for their providing medicine to their community, to their client base. In fact, they've already submitted a letter of support on behalf of the Marshfield Clinic to the State of Wisconsin Public Service Commission, so we appreciate that. We've also engaged with a variety of groups. The Lions Club, we've met with them. We've also I presented at the local ATV clubs last meeting. I presented a short synopsis of where we are on the project. I see in the audience we have Brent Jelinski from North Lakeland School. And Brent, why don't you say a few words? Thank you, Brent.
Just from an educational standpoint for students, broadband is extremely important. As Bill mentioned, a lot is being put on the internet, and there's a lot of opportunities there. So we have students that do not have access to broadband where they currently live. Some of them walk to this very location and sit outside when it's raining or snowing to have access to that. And it's also a big piece of information for us to be able to get them information, give them opportunities, and give them the opportunities that they would have maybe in another location, so they can continue to live up here and receive an amazing education.
And Brent, it's my understanding you're aware of families that would have moved to the area but did not because of the lack of broadband?
Yeah, we have it's increasing. I mean, it started with a slow trickle, and now I get quite a few families that are moving to the area or thinking about moving to the area because they can work remotely. A lot of these families, when the mom and dad met, they lived in the city when it was great when they didn't have kids, and now that they have kids, they want to be in a place that they can raise them and let them run around outside. And broadband is extremely important to them. And we've had some families that have wanted to live in our district and actually not been able to, and moved to as close to Aspenakko because they could get broadband there. And to prove that point, our student population right now is almost 25% open enrollment into the district. So we have almost a quarter of our student population that lives outside of the North Lakeland School District, but choose to come to our district. And part of that is because of the opportunities that the families have or need outside of the district, but they still want their kids coming to North Lakeland.
Thank you, Brent. And I think everyone would agree that maintaining the high quality of elementary education within our community is of utmost importance, so that the availability of broadband and continued expansion will allow the continued viability of North Lakeland School. Some of the other stakeholders, we've gotten a lot of support from our radio stations, WXPR and WRJO. They carry some of our information on the air. We appreciate that. One of the town supervisors from Land O'Lakes came in here and explained to us what's going on in Land O'Lakes. They're laying fiber to approximately 600 premises in Land O'Lakes, and that is a boom for that town. I know that Barry McLean is here, and if asked, could speak to one of the call centers that went into Land O'Lakes and is hiring individuals because broadband is available in that town. I'm just going to leave it at that. We've been to our town board, and we continue to go to the town board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. what we were told, and this was a learning experience for us, or a learning exercise, what we were told by the state broadband director is go out and get support. Whoever that might be, because this private-public partnership is really important to the state when they start awarding grants. So we've done that. We learn well, and we've done it. All right, let's start getting to the nuts and bolts. We sent submittals for conceptual plans and estimated costs to a number of providers. And we really only, well, we didn't really. We got only 2 proposals. One was, I would say, fairly refined. The other one was not, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So the 2 providers, the suppliers, were CenturyLink and ChoiceTel. Our working objectives in what we use for the requests for these concepts and costs were based upon really 2 objectives. One was creating a broadband business district where speeds could be 1 gigabit or greater for companies. You know, we're talking about, you know, reasonable sized companies who would come in and require that level of speed. And Dennis mentioned an organization in Land O'Lakes. Well, they run a call center, and in that call center, they have people who use the internet and the telephone based upon the internet to communicate. So they need a high level of bandwidth going back and forth. So that was our one working objective. Our other working objective was at least 25 megabits of speed to the rest of the township. And oh, by the way, we needed it to be fiber-based, fiber optic based, which that's the present in urban settings, and it's got to be the future. Because we looked at fixed wireless, that's not a solution for a township. The big telco providers use a technology called DSL. That's just not it. That's a stopgap approach. Fiber optic, as we're sitting here today in 2019, fiber optic cable is really the only way that it makes sense to deploy high-speed broadband. There's some research being done on some other technologies that hold some promise, but that's it today. All right, we're going to talk more about these, but this is what the high-level look was. CenturyLink gave us a cost estimate, and we're going to break this down, of $7.5 million. Yes, that's $1 million, that's not thousands. To put broadband or put fiber optic to every household in the township. And they could do that project completely in 2020. ChoiceTel, which is an Eagle River-based fiber broadband provider, told us that they thought they could do it for like $2.6 million, but they will not be able to start the project until 2022, and it would take them 2 or 3 years. They started Land O'Lakes, which is 600 households, in 2016, and we know that they're going to be working to try to finish them up in 2020. If they outsource their fiber optic trenching, they may be able to complete in 2022. But Steve just recently reached out for some more clarification, and what they told us is they just don't have the capability right now to provide us any more clarity or any other information. So they're maxed out. They're a small organization, and they're maxed out. None of these cost estimates include supplier contributions or grant funding. We're concentrating on the CenturyLink option because that seems to make sense. So I'm going to run through some of that with you, and then Steve is going to come up and show you some more numbers. So we're focusing on CenturyLink because of a number of reasons. They're our current provider. Now, that industry is not regulated anymore, but for the most part, the big providers tend to still stay out of everybody else's territory. They've invested, CenturyLink has invested over $3 million in federal tax dollars in the 62 miles of fiber that's already within the township of Boulder Junction. That's a significant investment. And they have more flexibility in completing a project in our time frame. So when we got this information, we looked at it just like you did and said, well, that's a big number. So we said, let's look at maybe something a little different. Let's look at phasing this. And these are the options. So complete the entire project in 2020. That's the price tag minus any supplier contribution or grant funding. Option 2, and I'll talk more about this in a moment, is to complete the project over 2 to 5 years. And then have one project, which I'll show you, in 2020 for about 1.9 million. This project, you always look at return on investment. And this option, let me just go here. This is our, for lack of a better term, our Boulder Broadband Business District. So let me just give you a tour here. We're sitting right here in the community center, all right? So the proposed project would be south, this is where Marsh Road hits County Highway M, would be south of the community center. As we go east, it takes into account the land that was purchased by the DNR a couple of years ago, and then goes north. Let me see here, this is St. Anne Church, here is the Lutheran Church, so it encompasses the churches. And then it goes up to Little Rice Lake, over, and then up County Highway M, and the southeast side of Boulder Lake. Comes back around, let's see, this is down County Highway K. This is some of the Camp Manitwish property. This is the Vilas County Transportation location. Marsh Road. So this is state land. This is primarily open land. I know there's some potential development property in here, but when we look at this area, that is 341 living units. And living units mean they are residents or businesses. And when we look at how many we have in the township of Boulder Junction, we're not positive, but we're using the number of 1,459. So that would hit 341 living units. Arguably, if we have businesses that we're going to market to, this is the area in which they're going to locate. And we've got a lot of storefront there where businesses could go. Okay? That project, this project alone is 1.5 million. And it includes fiber to every living unit, including these things, these boxes that are called optical network terminals. It's where the fiber optic comes in, and then you plug in your LAN cable or your router, your telephone. That's the box that you need to make it all work. All right. That's one piece of option 2. The other piece of option 2 is we have the 62 miles of fiber optic cable in the township today. It's great, we can't really use it. Because when CenturyLink put it in, they didn't really put in the transfer point to get that high-speed fiber optic cable to your household, okay? This project would add 28 access points to that fiber so we can light up that existing 62 miles of fiber, okay? So you look at that and you say, infrastructure's in the ground, we can't really use it. This is where the numbers start getting a little fuzzy for CenturyLink because they haven't engineered this thing yet. They're still working with a planner, looking at information. That engineering stage is critical to lock into all these numbers, but they're telling us that this part of the project would provide fiber optic internet for 200 plus living units. So if you count the numbers, that gives us 541 of the 1,459. The price tag here is $420,000. And again, I guess I didn't put it on here. That does not include supplier contribution or grant funding. Sir, yes, go ahead.
You told us that phase 1, where the locations would be. Where would the second locations be for the 200 plus? What area?
Do you know? Because we don't know either. And we knew that would be a question that would come up. So for those of you who didn't hear the question, let me just go back here. On this part of option 2, where are these? That's a piece of information that CenturyLink has not provided us.
They can't tell you where the 62 miles are?
Well, they won't tell us, okay? They won't tell us because of confidential information. Anyway, we've been asking them since February, and we don't have it, okay? So we're a little frustrated by that. We've gone out and surveyed, just based upon what we've been getting from them and what we have on our maps, we probably have 60% identified.
So just so you understand, Bill and his wife drove the town roads looking for the white poles with the orange caps, which indicate the location of fiber. So Bill had put together a map on his own that we can use for our own purposes. But CenturyLink has indicated that they're restrained or constricted because of homeland security concerns as to identifying the location of their fiber optic network. That's one of the reasons they told us.
Yeah, the bottom line is we don't have it. So, now will we have it post-engineering? And that would be, from a construction standpoint, that would be an expectation. But then that's a different situation than we have an agreement in place. So, Dick, do you have a comment?
As an engineer, having spent 30 years in telecommunications, supporting new technologies and the wholesale marketplace, my perspective is that what we're asking for from CenturyLink is very proprietary information. They need to be competitive in the marketplace. ChoiceLink could come in and demand to lease that dark fiber that's in the ground. It's totally deregulated today, a very competitive marketplace.
Yeah, and
So Bill, one thing I guess I'd like to say is that we did have a meeting with CenturyLink, and they did show us a map of where everything was. They wouldn't give us anything on paper, but we were able to see where all the fiber was and where all the nodes were. So it's not like they were totally hiding it from us. They're just really reluctant to give us anything on paper.
And Steve has that in his photographic memory, so we have that for us. All right, let's continue to move through here. One of the questions, or one of the pieces of feedback that we received was, what does this service cost look like? And so anyway, we put some information together. If we have this fiber optic internet that's provided by CenturyLink, what does it look like for you? Well, if you use DirecTV or Dish, and we understand that the costing there can be $120 a month, or in some cases even more, or if you use carbon cable, which is, we know is going away, that's anywhere between $60 and $120 a month, okay? If you use HughesNet, which is a satellite service for your internet, Carbon or Verizon internet, you're paying anywhere between $60 and $120 a month. The cost of the CenturyLink high-speed broadband is, I'm going to put these in kind of just ranges for what most people would get, $50 to $65 a month. And then your streaming TV service. How many use a streaming TV service today? Oh, wow, that's quite a bit. So those of you who don't, these are internet-based services, and I have a few of them listed here that sell, and anybody who uses one, you know that there's no perfect solution out there, that sell streaming TV services to you as a consumer, and you watch them on your smart TV or your computer or your tablet or your phone. Okay? That cost, and this is a volatile market, it's just going all over the place, is between $6 and, that's a typo, $59 a month. The one I saw, I guess I saw two of them for $59.95. I need to amend that. So that's kind of the cost impact. Now, what does CenturyLink's broadband service look like? Well, here's another one that was a little difficult to really get to, but we got it officially. And they gave us two options, residential and business. And what we're looking at here, and this is why we did the $50 to $65 a month, is most people are probably going to be in this area, okay? You can get up to a gig a month. I'm sorry, you can get up to a gig for $85 a month. The business piece, and maybe Steve, when you come up, you could talk a little bit more about this, but the business piece is really more about symmetric upload and download speeds. So if you have 100 meg down, you're getting 100 meg up. Businesses require that kind of speed today, but I can assure you that it won't be long before residences require that speed as well. It's just the direction we're going in this area of technology. So if you run a business here, you can get a gig for $255 a month, up and down. Okay, we know that you're going to have some questions here, but Steve's going to come up and give us a bit more detail about the numbers.
Okay, so to get to a little more specifics, we'll break it down by project. First project is the downtown project, 341 potential customers at a total cost of almost $1.5 million. CenturyLink will contribute $220,000, and so between the grant and Boulder Junction, we'd be looking at basically $625 for each. The 28 access points, again, 200 customers, cost of $420. CenturyLink's contribution is $80. So that would require 170 by Grant and 170 by Boulder Junction. One thing that we don't know is there's also existing access points that they put out there when they buried the fiber. We don't know exactly how many there are or where they're located, but they will also be able to service customers. We don't know how many, but it will certainly be a meaningful amount. The other thing is a node. What a node is where the fiber turns into copper. So for your existing DSL, there are nodes all over the township. They figured maybe 125, maybe much more than that, as far as customers that could connect with fiber through a node. So a node acts like an access point as well. So we really don't know what this number will really be. It's a moving target. I would say that's probably low, but CenturyLink, until they engineer it, they really don't know what that number is going to be. So when we look at this, I think the important thing to note for us is that we're doing roughly 50% of the population for a much lower amount, 800,000, than when we initially looked at that 7.5. What does that mean? It really means that the other 50% are the challenging 50%, right? Those are the ones where we need to run a ton of fiber to handle very few residences, and there's quite a few spots like that within the township. So what we're looking to do is hopefully get some other grant funding down the road, which is the CAF3, the Connect America funds, to hopefully extend our fiber network to kind of mitigate the cost for the township. So as we look at this project, we feel at least we're covering an awful lot of people for as little money as we possibly can. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes?
So are you saying that the existing access point and the existing nodes are gonna be just picked up when we do that 28 access points and the?
Well, really what it is, honestly, is it's included in this number here. And so the technology that we're deploying is called GPON. And so when we put that equipment in the office, in the town, that's going to allow anybody along the fiber network to hook fiber up to their house. But they need a way to connect to the fiber, and so they need a, quote, access point. So it's a good question, because even if it's somebody that isn't near an access point that either we're going to put in or already exists, they could, if they wanted to, get a bunch of homeowners in their area together and say, you know what, let's just put in an access point, work with CenturyLink and get it done. And so that's something that's very doable. The other thing is that if we look at how CenturyLink is going to do this, if you're within 600 feet of an access point, there'll be no charge to get the fiber buried to your home. If you're further than 600 feet, they'll cover the first 600. After that, you have to cover the rest, and that'll be between $1 and $2 a foot.
If you have in your neighborhood the plastic pipe with the orange cap on it, is that a node or is that an access point? Don't you know?
That's funny, I asked that question just the other day because I wasn't sure. That's actually just a marker of where the fiber is located. So it's not indicative of any type of an access point or node. All that is periodically they put those so that other utilities or other people know that there's actually fiber there.
So, what is an access point? Is it above ground, below ground?
I believe at this point, I believe it's below ground. Once it's actually put together with actual fiber, it probably is a box over ground. Bill, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be above ground, kind of like the nodes are today. In most cases, sometimes if you really look around at these things, you'll see two posts, two of these markers, and then you'll see a trap underneath, like a conduit. They can do it underground as well. It's really their call.
The other nice thing that we really didn't talk about is fiber requires far less equipment than DSL. So hopefully the amount of outages that we see, because we know we see a lot of outages up here, will be mitigated by that. It also doesn't require the power that the nodes do. And so one would hope we'd see a lot more dependability, because a lot of the outages we see around here are local. If one piece of equipment goes down, you go down until they're able to get there and fix that piece of equipment.
And here's some information we picked up yesterday at the meeting. Some of you probably already know this. This summer, Frontier in a certain area couldn't even provide telephone service for 3 weeks. They were completely out. So we got a bit of an earful from another community member, and they're really, really upset about that. It happens. Okay.
The does the, you've got the ESL now, we had, before CenturyLink got the $3 million grant, we had 3 megabytes per second, now we got 10. Does it have anything to do with, because we're closer to these access points or nodes?
Yeah, you're a smart guy, yeah, so the deal with copper is the further you go away from the node, the worse you are as far as your speeds go. So if you're only getting 10, what that tells me is you're a ways away from the node. So probably further than 600. So if you have really fast speed now, let's say 40 or above, you're probably pretty close to a node and you're probably within that 600-foot area. But if you're further, then you're probably not. That doesn't mean there won't be an access point put there, but a node probably wouldn't do it for you. Okay, so now the impact on the taxpayer. So we looked at a couple of different scenarios. One would be if we got grant funding, the other if we didn't get any grant funding. So the total amount borrowed would be roughly $800,000 for a term of 17 years. Cost per thousand of value for a home would be 15 cents, and obviously we can double that at the 1.6 if we weren't awarded any grants. So how does that affect you as a homeowner? Let's just take a $200,000 property value. You're looking at $30 on the 800,000 and 59 bucks on the 1.6 million. That's per year, obviously. Any other questions on that?
One question I have is that without knowing if we're gonna be able to get higher speed, it sounds like you're gonna ask us to approve something that's gonna cost us. We don't know if we're gonna get the benefit personally.
Absolutely, and there's no question about that. That's why I think it's important to note that this is the process, right? And so logically speaking, we had to start somewhere. And the logical spot was, okay, what is the best bang for the buck? You know, we're covering 50% of the people with this project. We know there's a lot more to do, and we're going to be working on that in the future. So, you know, nobody can guarantee anything, obviously. We can't guarantee that you're going to be near a new access point. We can't guarantee that you'll ever get fiber to your home. But our plan is to run fiber to every home within the township. You know.
So this goal, as we look at it, is we are looking at what's best for the viability of town of Boulder Junction, Wisconsin, increasing people's benefits here in town, the businesses, the people, the students, growing the town, watching the changes that can happen to town, not as us individually. So it's really looking at how it benefits we want to benefit ourselves, but we want to benefit the community as a whole.
I think that's true. You know, being on the school board, it was important to know we passed a really big referendum. And it was, you look at a lot of older people that don't have kids, don't have grandchildren within the school district, they overwhelmingly supported it because I think they knew it was the right thing. You know, even though they're like, okay, well, it doesn't affect me or my children, they knew that it was the best thing for the community. And I think we all have to look towards that and go, you know what, that is in fact the truth. You know, if you believe anything that Bill said, you probably believe that yes, it's a good thing to do for the town.
And the other thing about it is if it's in town, it's that structure and infrastructure is that much closer to you than if we don't do it.
Exactly.
You know, it's gonna continue to benefit and grow if it's there, but if it's not there.
And the great thing too is that we're gonna be on the forefront of this, right? If we do this now, we're gonna jump ahead of almost every other rural community in the state of Wisconsin. So it's a big, big deal to be able to advertise ourselves as this type of community. That piece of paper that said we're, telecommuter forward, that doesn't mean anything unless we do things like this, right? Jim?
So if we move forward with this, no matter whether we borrow money or get grant money or whatever, down the road, the future of being able to obtain other grant monies and assistance is probably going to be more available to us because we've started this project and we're trying to reach our citizens that are farther away from the other option.
Okay, that's a good question, Jim. So when we talk about what we're doing here and how we identified the project we were going to do, there's a couple things that we thought about. One was the best bang for the buck, which we did. The other one had to do with CAF 3 funding. So I know Bill talked about CAF 1 and CAF 2. That's the Connect America funds, which are the federal funds where $3 million of fiber was buried within the township. Boulder Junction's density and demographic is a perfect spot for them to deploy more fiber. The way that they determine where that fiber is buried is going to be based on the speed that's mandated in the grant. So the last time it came in, it was 10 and 1. So 10 download, 1 upload. So if you look through the community right now, there's a ton of people that are 10 and 1. So for CenturyLink to take the grant money and do what they were supposed to do under the grant, they had to provide 10 and 1 to, I believe, 80% of the population. So if we look at what CAF 3 might look like, it might be 25 and 3 is the minimum. So if 25 and 3 was the minimum, we know that the town of Boulder Junction, the actual township, the one that was going to handle 300 and however many people in the town, unlikely that would be covered by CAF 3 because it already has 25 and 3 in a lot of locations, right? Same thing along the existing fiber line. That already has 25-3 in a lot of spots. So CAF 3 probably wouldn't apply to those areas. Where CAF 3 is going to come in is those hard to get to spots, and that is money that is going to be federal money that hopefully we can get, where we wouldn't have to put anything in. Where we might have to partner with CenturyLink, they might go, you know what, we're going to expand the fiber and we're going to put in more nodes, and we might go, well, how about we don't do that? Why don't you expand the fiber and we run fiber to the homes? But still, the cost for the taxpayers would be much, much less. Because those are those ones that are really hard to justify. We had a quote from CenturyLink to handle South Trout Lake, Man Lake, Muskellunge Lake, and Little John, which I believe was 63 residents. It was $600,000, right? So it gives you an idea of the challenges we had when we looked at it. But we're well aware that part of our responsibility as a group is to try to get internet service to the people that have very, very little. But at this point, it's really hard when you look at the numbers to say, okay, that's a good first step. You know, this is the logical first step. Then we really got to sit back over the next couple of years and figure out a practical way to get that high-speed internet to those remote locations.
Well, and that's a good segue. So why don't we kind of move into that next phase, if you will. And if we look at our timeline, you know, how do you do these projects if you're going to phase them? You make some sense out of it. Because one thing, we have a couple of things that are in opposing directions. One is, when you do a project, you want to get the maximum return on investment on that project, okay? But then we have those, and I'll use Big Lake and Man Lake and Little John, that are completely underserved, you know? So do we try to do everything together? You know, that's going to take an awful lot of money, or do we space it out? So this is a potential, and I emphasize this, a potential expansion proposal. We've already talked about 2020. Our next area of density is Boulder Junction Northeast. And I'm not going to go through those maps again, but they'll be on the deck, that'll be posted to the town website. All that's there for you. But if you think about like Main Street and like from Camp Manitowish, northeast. Am I doing that right? Northeast. That's the high, other than this 3BD, this is the highest density that we have in the township, okay? So that makes some semblance of sense to do that. And then, you know, do we select northwest or southeast or west? So this is the potential that by 2024, when we do our catch-up, cleanup, and our punch list, we could have fiber to every living unit in the township. Okay. But Jim, to follow on your point, it's going to take some additional funds, and I'm going to hit this kind of hard here over the next couple of minutes. So you can't see this because it's off the screen, but we know that there are additional federal funds that are coming for broadband in 2020, okay? And what we've been told, no guarantees, is that the continued build out of Boulder Junction is an attractive project for those federal funds, okay? So do we say, okay, we're gonna bite the whole bullet and do everything next year? Or do we bite the bullet and say we're gonna do everything in 2 years? Or do we say we're gonna do it over a period of 5 years? Okay? That's kind of the quandary that we're going through. But let me just go and give you a bit more information, and we're gonna be looking for feedback. We've talked a lot about the PSE, and this is an important aspect. There are other grant funding, other foundation fundings out there, but folks, 2020 and 2021 is our opportunity. The state has $48 million over the next 2 years to fund these projects. Over the last 2 years, it was $14 million. So this is something that didn't have a lot of resistance on either side in Madison, and the support was there to provide this funding, okay? So we know in 2020 that there's $24 million. If we, and we might go to the back to that spreadsheet if we need to when you have questions, but if we would go to the state and say, Boulder Junction is going to match $800,000, and the grant should provide $800,000, that's 3.3% of that $24 million, okay? So not bad. We already talked about the grant filing deadline. There are never any guarantees until it's stamped, right? But we have positioned ourselves extremely well with the folks at Madison, who in some cases are the decision makers here. And yesterday, the meeting that we attended, that was really important, because we're there, we're prepared, we're well disciplined to do this project, and they get it. They get it. No guarantees, but it sounds good. We had a question. CenturyLink would take the lead on the grant submission project, but to make sure that it's done right, guess what? We're going to be very, very involved in that. Partnerships and support. I'm going to come back to that. But those are essential to success, grant success. Already talked about the 50%. This one is important. So at the meeting yesterday, I asked, do you have a limit for grant awards? And the answer was no, but in the past, with much lower levels of funding, our max has been about $700,000. With, what would that be? 3 times the level of funding in 2020. What they said is they believe that this will be the first year that they have $1 million award. Okay? So, and these are government folks, they're not politicians. They can't tell you, but they told us. And one just, no, I'm going to leave that one. So, the funding for this type of project is probably there. We just have to go fishing. For the entire project, I don't know if they have the appetite to fund over $3 million. That's kind of just laying it out for you, okay? It's an option for us because we know doing it like this is going to be somewhat inequitable for folks for a while until they get it. I don't know what to do about that. It's just the way it is. All right, it's almost your turn. All right. One thing that we learned yesterday, because we talked in August about your support letters are going to be really important, And we collectively, we and Sherry and Teresa have been very involved in that, in setting up a process to get that information to you, to make it as easy as possible for you to get these letters to us. What we learned yesterday is that's not everything, okay? It's very important for the provider to show success. So it's kind of like if you build it, they need to come. So if you have access to that fiber, another part of success is you sign up for it. Okay? It only makes sense. The PSC doesn't want to give money to a provider and then walk away and it doesn't benefit anybody. And at the end of the day, you know, these are our tax dollars. That's a waste of money. We have to benefit from it. So we have to commit, and we as a community have to support. It will start with the letters. This is kind of open question for you. So what's the cost of doing nothing? I don't know. But the only thing we can do is look at the data, look at the information that's out there, and it's overwhelming for the communities that invest in broadband. They do better than the ones that don't. All right, we're going to look for your feedback. So Steve and Dennis, could you help send those?
Okay, and this is
Yeah, so we'll talk
feedback.
about that right now. So we have designed this very simple support. We need feedback in how you feel about supporting a project. And it's two options. Option one is to do, with CenturyLink, to do the entire township next year in 2020 for a price tag of about $7.5 million. Now, that does not include supplier contributions or grant funding. Option two is to install it only in the Boulder Junction downtown area, you know, that extended map I showed, and then the additional access points, so those who live near fiber can get that fiber optic internet. Susie, I'll be right with one. And then if you do not support any investment, we want to know that. Susie, your question.
My question is, when you were in Madison or Grady previously, were you advised to hit the target at about 800,000 for success? I mean, they can't direct me,
No.
but I'm assuming it was the halfway of the first option, and it was also achievable.
Well, let me put it like this. When I said, you know, the price tag for the big project, there really wasn't much response. This price tag for the 2020 got significant response, okay? So I would say that's a clue, but I don't know. Yes, sir.
I've got three questions. We go with option one. Means everybody, even the remotest, would get the living unit would get.
Fiber to the living unit, yes.
And no matter which way we go, is it still only up to 600 feet? They will pay, the homeowner has to pay the rest?
So the question is, if we do option one, is it still the 600 feet? So will CenturyLink pick up the 600 feet and then the homeowner is responsible? Yes, that seems to be their standard.
The last question I've got then is,
Oh, let me just hold on. Steve is, because I may have not answered that question right, so.
Yeah, I think if they do the whole build out, everything is paid for. That would be the ONT devices, the bearing of the fiber, everything. So that would be a different thing. It's a good question too, because if we look at the additional access points and the existing nodes, that is the situation where the 600 feet comes in. And the ONT devices, CenturyLink said they would cover those as well. But that's where the 600 feet comes in. And to answer your question you asked me before, I thought I asked Mark from CenturyLink yesterday that same question. I said, I know people are going to ask me, I'm along a fiber line, how do I know if there's going to be an access point here or if I'm going to be able to get to it? And he said that if the parameters they use, they said if there are 5 people that could be within 600 feet of a potential access point, that is likely where an access point is going to go. So you can probably look around your neighborhood and say, okay, how many houses are here? And is this a spot where they'd likely put an access point? You know, until they engineer it, they don't know. But he said that's the best answer. And then the other one is, if you have fast internet speed now, chances are you're near a node and you'll be able to hook down as well.
Last question.
Third question.
Last question. We've already paid CenturyLink $3 million with the grant a couple years ago. At federal government. We paid. Now they want additional 7.5. It's over $10 million. Choicetel, 2.6 for the whole works. That's 4 times the amount. And I know it's competitive. What's the chance of going back to CenturyLink and say, hey, you're not competitive? Or is it just because they're just too darn big?
We're comparing walnuts to pumpkins. A small company is totally different than a large company with a lot of infrastructure. You know, and I know we've had those conversations, you know, are we being gouged? That's their cost. And if we would go to Frontier or Spectrum, it's what big companies charge. You know, the Choicetel option, it's out there. We got an email with a couple of prices in it. It's just not the level of engagement that we received from Choicetel. How's that? Was that a good way to say it?
Mm-hmm. Well,
We would love for the same response we didn't get. Wendy?
if we go with the Choicetel option too, since they can't start till after 2020 or 2021, we would miss out on any grant opportunities that we'd get from the state right now.
Yeah, we don't know what it's gonna look like.
Okay.
So that's
Yep.
another consideration. Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm missing something, but isn't option 2 basically what you guys are proposing as the most cost-effective way of going about this, as opposed to 1?
Well, we wanted to get, this is just feedback, we wanted to understand where the community is on this. You know, if there's an overwhelming driver to do everything next year, you know, that's gonna tell us that we need to, you know, we're trying to just balance stuff here. I mean, that's a lot of money, it's a lot of money. Let me see if there's anybody else. Let me take you, sir.
It seems to me that CenturyLink sort of has you, so to speak. They're here, and if they can't give you the best price, there's something wrong with it. Now, I don't know about everybody else in here. How many have tried to deal with CenturyLink personally? How many have tried that? They are ridiculous to try and deal with on a personal level. And is that, you know, unless, I'd be not in favor of dealing with CenturyLink just because of the way they have treated me and everyone else I have talked to about dealing with CenturyLink. And if they're gonna maintain that attitude toward customers, I'm of the opinion we find somebody else.
Yeah, and no, I appreciate that because I share similar frustrations with you. What I can tell you is, so we moved permanently to Boulder Junction 4 years ago. And I had I had a previous colleague who was still with CenturyLink at the time in Northeast Wisconsin. I needed him to intervene to help me to get service. It was abysmal, okay? We moved a couple of times over the last 4 years just because we were building a different house. So that goes back to like the end of 2017. They were getting a little better. In 2018, when I dealt with them, they were a little better. And then we lost our landline telephone. They were right on it. 2 days later, or the next day, everything was fixed. So I hear what you're saying. That concern is throughout the town. We got an earful about the total lack of support from Frontier yesterday. Corporate America today is merge, purge, and submerge. I don't know what to do about it, but I'd love to use somebody local, you know, another competitor, because competition is a good thing. But we need those competitors to step up to help us.
Right,
So-
and Bill, let's be clear, we asked everybody, anyone that was a potential provider, we asked them to come to Boulder Junction to provide fiber to the premises. AT&T said no. Spectrum Charter said no. Frontier said no. ChoiceTel said, maybe I can start in 2 years. So we're with you. We went to the satellite companies. They can't do it. So,
You're not the only place.
but let me finish. The one thing that I believe is very interesting is what CenturyLink is proposing in Boulder Junction is the first opportunity in Wisconsin where they are providing fiber to the homes. Steve, am I right or not?
In a rural area.
In a rural area, they are using our town as their model. The state individuals yesterday that we met with almost fell over when we told them that. That is a change in their corporate philosophy as a result of the hard work and the input from these two gentlemen and the town officials and the citizens. You are changing the corporate thinking of that huge company. It's amazing.
It's, so, let me just address this. Try to,
Perfect,
okay?
wonderful.
So I came from that corporate environment. It's not a nice one today. It really isn't. And when companies merge and acquire companies, it's almost like the 34-inch muskie eating the 30-inch walleye. That's kind of what it is. And it takes a while to digest that. 5 years ago, CenturyLink went through that with their Quest acquisition. It's a mess. It's a mess. It takes a while for them to digest and get through that. Hear what you're saying, appreciate your feedback, and thank you for it. You're not alone. You're not alone. If you look at right now, we've got the CenturyLink, there are some benefits and some risks with going that direction. There are some benefits and risks with going with ChoiceTel. We just need your feedback. Okay? We're getting close to the top of the hour. Any other questions? And I got a couple of things. Yes, sir.
On that $7.5 million, do you have a slide that says what that would cost the unit for $1,000 or $400,000 house? Is it gonna be, if the 1.9 is $100 for 400,000, or we talking about 300,000 to 400,000?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Steve, did you yesterday
Well,
get a call?
you don't know what CenturyLink's contribution would be, so if you said, okay, let's just shoot from the hip and say that that's gonna be $6 million, right? So you could probably take that slide and multiply it by 3. If we didn't get the grant funding, we'll go for 3, probably 3.5.
So if it goes down to 6, is it possible to get 50% grant money?
Well, that's the other thing. CenturyLink yesterday said that they were concerned, actually Friday the letter we got, that they were concerned that a $3 million grant might be more than what the PSC would be willing to do. And that was kind of echoed again in the meeting yesterday, I think, where the biggest they'd ever done with 8, as they jumped to 3 would probably be a pretty big ask. So that was part of the decision-making process too. It's like, well, we don't want to go too high and then not get anything.
Okay, if you could please give us your feedback. That's really what we're looking for today. I wish we had absolute firm numbers on everything. That is, unfortunately, that is post-engineering. We have given you the best information that we have today. So please fill out your survey. Are we putting them over here, Dennis?
Yes, there's the box.
There's a box?
The box. And it's just a survey. I'd be remiss if I didn't state this. So what's our goal? Our goal is to have additional meetings in early November to provide you with whatever information we have
Here's the next steps.
as of that meeting. In addition, the best information that we have is that the budget levy hearing is going to be on November the 12th at 6:30. And it's possible that there's going to be an advisory vote taken at that meeting on a project. So I would ask you to consider that. Put that on your calendar, November the 12th at 6:30, the budget hearing.
Okay, so I think, let me get back to you. So all this stuff Dennis talked about, you know, if we have support to go with the project, as I mentioned, we're gonna be working very closely with CenturyLink on a grant submission. You know, there's other grant funding, foundation funding out there to help ease the burden. And you know, if you support this and say, let's go forward, then we prepare for a construction project in 2020. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Can you put the map back up of where you're gonna put it? Yeah, I wanna give you this back. I'm Bob Zahn, I live in Presque Isle, so I'm a foreigner here. I don't want to cause any trouble, but I wanna give you this ballot back, because I don't think I can vote, but just something to think about. He's gonna show the map up here. I live in Frontier Lakes, and between Natural Lakes, Frontier Lakes, and Lone Pine, there are 431 parcels. And of those parcels, there are 261 structures. A home, a garage, some people live in their garage, but that's another story. And then there are 125 permanent residents like myself who live here year round. So we talked about ROI a lot, return on investment. North of Highway B is what I'm talking about. Now I know there's a lot of political things between Boulder Junction and Presque Isle. It's a different community. But what is the possibility of these three associations that have 400-some people could possibly build, live on the lake, pay taxes to Presque Isle, unfortunately, but still talk about the community. Knowing my little bit of investigation, I have found out that Lone Pine has fiber optic into some node somewhere. Same thing with Natural Lakes. They have fiber optics in there somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where. So we're not talking about running fiber optics from the center of Boulder Junction up to Natural Lakes or Lone Pine. Unfortunately, where I live, right on the Michigan border, we don't have anything. I have one, you talk about 25 or 100 megabytes, I have one if I'm lucky. We're all on dead-end roads. I haven't heard anything about security. My neighbor cut his finger off. My other neighbor buried himself, taking snow off the roof, damn near killed himself. We need access to emergency services. When the trees fall on the power lines and the phone lines and knock them down, dead-end street, people could die because we can't call. My cell phone, that's a whole nother story. I can't even get a signal. So, all my blabbing, I'm just saying, consider the possibility of reaching beyond the physical, invisible line up there somewhere where Boulder Junction ends and these three associations I'm talking about begin.
Yeah, I think what we're doing, because I've addressed that specifically with both Choicedell and CenturyLink, and what we're doing now, I mean, obviously as the town of Boulder Junction, we can't directly fund something up there, but what we're doing now is likely going to help you guys up there, in one way or the other. You know, I don't know if the equipment that we put in town here, I don't know how far that goes, but if you're fed out of this office, it's conceivable that you could have fiber up there sooner than you think.
Do you have a landline?
Yeah.
What's your number? 385?
It's 385.
Then you're in Boulder Junction Exchange.
Right.
Yeah, so the equipment that we put in here, as a byproduct of us putting it in, you guys might be able to deploy fiber to the home.
Since Brent is here, one little goofy thing that happened coincidentally, Monday evening, I'm taking a class at his school on iPads, or iPhones rather, how to effectively use an iPhone. And through Nicolay College, and they in their Ultimate Wisdom scheduled it at his school. Brett's in there trying to get us a signal, and we couldn't get a signal, so guess what? Tonight it's gonna be here in this building, because they couldn't get a signal in his school. Now, we talk about the young students in this community trying to learn when they don't have the tools to learn. I'm just saying.
Well, and you hit on mobile phone service. That's next, because it's not good. Yes?
I think if you want to save money and go over a period of time, not bite the bullet and pay the big amount and use more grant money, we are going to have to figure out a way to equalize the inequities. And I know you made a comment about you don't know how to do that, but I think if we want to provide more internet for everyone over a period of time, we're going to have to figure out how to manage the inequities between a portion of the community getting everything the first year and other people possibly waiting till 2024. So whether that means providing some type of small business who builds and operates an internet service that is partially subsidized by the community, so people who are taking classes remotely and need to perhaps download their information by midnight tomorrow night to get their stuff in, to get their grade, then something like that is going to have to be considered.
So are you suggesting that the Township of Boulder Junction start a cooperative?
That's a possibility. But somehow, if we want everybody to think globally of everyone, then concentrating on a small area, we have to figure out a way to make it more equitable for those who still have the need presently and can't get the service for 4 years.
Yeah, I think one thing to look at is suggestions on how to possibly administer something like that. We're putting in a ton of effort doing what we're doing, and we're kind of mindful of, okay, how is this whole thing gonna roll out, and what's gonna be the simplest for the consumer? And the more you get into stuff like that, you're like, God, I have no idea how that would possibly be administered, and who's gonna be picking the winners and losers, and we're doing our best to try to get everybody as quickly as they can, as efficiently they can, the service. And beyond that, I guess I don't know, I'd be open to any options, but keep in mind who'd administer it and how, right? And who's gonna be given that power, so.
Yeah, and if you have some specific ideas, please, let us know, because we've had these conversations about, we talked about Frontier, Natural Lakes, Lone Pine, we've talked about a lot of different things. But we need a plan that's gonna work. That's the key. And cooperatives in Minnesota are wildly successful. Cooperatives are generally a nonprofit organization that's run by a board. It's not a government entity. It's got a tie, so there's a public-private relationship there. Most of those in Minnesota started as electric co-ops in the 1950s and then matured over time. We would have to start from scratch. So, that's going to take some time. Let's go over here.
I don't know if PSC awards grants, but in this scenario, just for the sake of conversation, what if they actually award more than what you guys are looking for? Is that a possibility, number one? Or if they do, would that then jack it up to possibly look at an option number one? You know what I mean? Or is that just pie in the sky? Is that too far out there?
I was gonna say something before and I held my tongue, and I'm not gonna say it, but,
Would that force it?
there could be that possibility this year, that's all I'm gonna say. And, yes, ma'am.
You said you've spoken recently with the Land Lake folks. What was their scenario there as far as grants and,
Yeah, so the question is about Land O'Lakes, and we have had a couple of conversations. They came down and we talked with them. They were starting in a different situation than Boulder Junction. They are serviced by Frontier. The peak speed that they were getting was 5 and 1, okay? We are in a much better situation than that. So they were starting from scratch. Our understanding is Frontier was not interested in doing an expansion project there. Frontier has, I think we learned yesterday, out of the 5 years now, Frontier has submitted for one grant request, and it was a small one. They just were a non-starter. So Land O'Lakes went out, and so Choicetel's been in business since 2011. They started providing services on the northeast side of Beaver River. They put fiber in the ground up, it's not 45. They took one of the back roads, and then they went up, I think it's K to S, and then over. So they had to plant that fiber to get it into Land O'Lakes. And then they started building out their network from there. Choicetel did not contribute anything to that project. Those funds came from the township of Land O'Lakes and the grant fund.
And it was several years.
I need to correct that.
Okay,
I need to correct that.
Give me the microphone.
Choicetel contributed $300,000.
They did, okay.
To the effort.
Okay, because that wasn't in there.
Because they were underbid on the contract. They got a $250,000 grant. The town came up with $250,000. The project is costing $800,000.
Who underbid them, Eric?
No, I'm saying they underbid on the project. They bid $500,000 on the project.
Oh, so they didn't bid enough.
It's costing $8.
Okay.
Okay, but Bill, once again, even in Land O'Lakes, that did not occur in 1 year, did it?
No.
No, it
It's
took
still-
how many years, Barry?
Well, they've been working on that for 2.5 years.
Right, and it's not expected to be completed until possibly 2021.
Understand, they did all their own fiber in.
Right.
They don't, they literally go out and dig the fiber in themselves.
But the point is, they didn't do it in 1 year. So in Land O'Lakes, which is going to have fiber to 600 premises, it took more than 1 year. So year one, somebody had fiber, someone did not. Some things take time unless the town comes up with $7.5 million. That would be an easy solve.
Well,
And I can also say that the people that they are digging fiber into now have 100 up and 100 down.
That's
That's
right.
exactly what they do.
Yep. Please.
Percentage-wise, I would like to know if we commit to money over 3-4 years, what is the likelihood that all will get the fiber optic? What is the second part of the question is, what is the likelihood that the project will stop after 2 years? And those in the remote lying areas will have paid for the centrally located people and not reap the benefit of that.
I don't think we can answer that. That's dependent upon the town's commitment and then additional grant funding.
No, Bill, our response is this, that when we file the grant application by December the 19th, if the multi-year plan is the proposal, it will be in the grant application. The state of Wisconsin doesn't want to see you drop the ball either. They want to see what is being done in each year, what projects are proposed down the road. Every That was one of the slides shows, we intend to cover the entire town. There's no doubt about that. We intend to cover the entire town. Unless we have $8 million, it's not gonna happen in year one. But we propose to cover
Yeah, let's address the issue. You're concerned about, and others, of being left out in the cold,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I get it. I get it. I think the only way to guarantee it is to do the project next year.
And to be clear, none of the three of us are gonna be affected by this project in our homes, so it's not like we have a stake in it of any kind.
Barb, I saw you first, go ahead.
Thank you. I just, you might have already said this, but just in a nutshell, I know you can't guarantee anything because the grant giver can't guarantee. But are the odds for obtaining an approximate same level of grant funding the same whether we go all next year or whether we go in multiple phases?
Repeat that question, please.
Is there option A or option B? Is there one of those where we're more likely to get more grant dollars?
That's looking into a crystal ball a bit, but what we heard yesterday was for 2020. How did I put that before you asked the question? There was a welcoming for submissions for 2020. We don't know what 2021 looks like. I can't, and I don't wanna, I don't know. I don't know. Guys, you know?
No, I think the question is really, are we more likely to get the grant if we apply all at once as opposed to dribbling in the future?
The most amount of money, the most amount of grant money, whether it's now or over 5 years or 4 years.
Yeah, I understand the grant money that's built up over 2 years. Yeah, so there's 24 million per year, 2020, 2021. There will be more grant money after that from the public services. So you certainly would apply for the grant for 2020 and an additional grant for 2021, no matter how much of the work is done by the end of 2020. You would do that because your chances of getting the second grant and following through the project, as Bill said, they want to be successful. They don't want to give you $1 million one year and let that peter out.
Well, and Barry makes a good point, and if we didn't address this, I apologize. With this grant submission, if we go with option 2 for 2020, it will include our strategy to build out the entire town. That will be in the grant submission, and they told us that's the type of information that they need to see. There was another, Jim, and I'll come back to you.
Okay, I just want to make a clarification. There is a lot of stakeholders out there. There is a lot of people in the 385 telephone network. However, the vote from the town board is going to be those voters that live and claim the town of Boulder Junction as their residents. I am a resident of Lockett-Flanders. I don't have a choice, but I am a stakeholder, and this is very important for my business.
Okay, appreciate that feedback, yes, sir.
It seems to me you're talking about grant money that is available with this application and the commitment on the state that there will be the same amount available in 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct. So it's 24 million in 2020, 24 million in 2021.
But we're talking, if we go the other route, we're talking 4 or 5 or 6 years out, and you're dealing with the government. Is anybody, that money, nobody knows what money is going to be available unless and they could take next year's money away. The state of Wisconsin gets broke. You're talking, you're betting a lot on stuff that may not be there. And unless you've dealt with that and understand that, this going way down the road, betting on money that you have not a clue is gonna be there. I don't care how much the state, you know, the committee wants to, ensure or see the projects go through. If they don't have the money from the legislature, it doesn't make any difference what the committee thinks. So, you need to be thinking about that and taking this thing way down the road and saying, well, we're gonna get everybody done. You're not gonna get everybody done unless the money's there.
And you can only go by history. And the history says that, you know, you receive one grant, you're much better positioned to receive the second grant as well. But, like you say, I mean, it's government, you don't know.
Well, the other thing is, you know, in this grant is for 2020. How many other communities?
Many.
That
Once
are
you
gonna
put
jump
24
on
million on
this
the table,
in
there's
2021, which means that your cut's gonna be a lot smaller than it was
I
in
can only tell you, the
2020.
first year the PSC offered grants, the total amount available was $3 million. Vilas County Economic Development at that time helped both Rhinelander and Eagle River apply for some of those grants. And the total amount of that $3 million that came into the Northwoods as a whole was almost $1.5 million. So they really want to support
How
the
many
rural areas.
applications did they get for that money?
Not nearly what they'll get for 24 million. Not nearly what they'll get. Correct, you're right.
You know, I'm just, let's
The bigger
be
the pot,
realistic
the
about
more
it.
applications you're gonna get.
If
But-
3 times the number of communities apply, you're not gonna get the same amount of money.
Well, and let's
Next go around.
and let's do this. It is a risk, and it's a risk that we've talked about. Thank you for bringing it up, because it is a risk. And this is the issue, there are no guarantees. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question. I happen to be in a 543 area, or the first 3 digits of my phone number, and that's Manitowish Wise. But I pay my taxes to Boulder Junction. Everybody keeps talking about this 385 thing.
Yeah.
Now, am I gonna get it? I mean, in the Newcomb Lane where I live?
You're in the township of Boulder Junction. This was a question for them because we were looking at that northwest corner, and that, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, that would require that we put this G-Pond equipment, this head-end equipment in Manitowish as well.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Craig, because you're one of the problem areas, right? Down Newcomb Lane all the way.
Yep.
So essentially what would have to happen is, because the 385 exchange is fed out of Boulder, and we're gonna pay to put that GPON equipment in there. If we were to do the whole township, we would also have to put GPON equipment in that Manitowish Water's office, so that some of the people in Manitowish Waters would benefit from it as well. But yes, to have your area served, we would have to put devices in the Manitowish Water's office.
That question was asked when we sat with our meeting with CenturyLink as well, because we used Newcomb Lane as an example, one of our scenarios. I said, we're going down 3 miles of road before we get to the residents, then we have to branch out to the residents. So that question was answered. That would be covered.
And the, not this project, but the 7.5 project would include that.
It'll go right to our residents, right?
Right to your residents, yes. Wendy, you had your hand up?
I think, you know, one of the biggest things, everyone's worried about the grant money and all that kind of stuff. I think we have to be committed as a town to making sure that broadband gets to everyone. Yes, we hope to get grant money, we hope we get sponsorship money, we hope that, you know, maybe the school can, and Marshfield Clinic and whoever else, all the stakeholders put money in, and that will make a difference. But we have to be committed as a town that we will be figuring out how to make sure that everyone is served. If the commitment of the town is that everyone gets served, we have to stand up and say, yep, we may have to pay for it as a town.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're getting close to the bottom of the hour. Anybody else? All right, well, I got a thank you slide up here, but Well, thank you for coming and being engaged and being active in your community to help us solve this issue. So, thank you.